What if you had spent many years putting everything into a dream, only to find that it had become a miserable failure? That you had become a miserable failure? How would you deal with the experience of failing and being rejected again and again and again as you strove to actualize that dream? What's worse, what if you eventually found yourself pushing 50 years of age, unemployed, and with even your partner telling you that you just don't have what it takes and to give up? Would you just throw in the towel? Well, this is exactly what happened to me, right before everything shifted and I became a globetrotting expert in my field. So in this video, the first of 3 on this topic, I'm going to tell you how I turned it all around and how years of struggle actually prepared me for success. I'll also share with you 3 crucial insights that I've learned about rising from failure to success as we seek to live our bliss, as they say. These hard-learned lessons have been taken from both my mistakes and from my wise choices. Because even though on the surface it would have seemed to an observer that I was experiencing a lot of rejection, a hell of a lot, just between you and me, I also continued to do a lot of things right. And those seeds have eventually sprouted. I think these insights will help you to live out your dream, even if you think you've taken many hard knocks. And regardless of where you find yourself right now, I hope you'll find the story and the insights I have inspiring. Now, allow me to be more precise. My goal for the past 2 decades or so has been to establish a career as a successful futurist. With a niche focus on the futures of the human mind, society and technology, doing work that is not only my passion, but which I genuinely believe will assist the human species transition into a more noble and sustainable expression of itself. Because let's face it, human civilization is in serious need of some self-corrections. But that isn't exactly a well-trodden career path, is it? And for years and years, I experienced often heartbreaking rejection and failure until today, where I enjoy a very satisfying career in the very field that I envisaged for myself. If you're new to this channel, my name's Marcus T. Anthony, and I'm currently Associate Professor of Foresight and Strategy at the Beijing Institute of Technology in Zhuhai, China. Here I teach courses about the future that I get to personally create. Courses with titles like Artificial Intelligence and the Future of the Mind and Leading the Future. I also write journal papers and books that I want to write and consult as a foresight expert to other universities, such as with my recent appointment as a foresight consultant at the National Research University Higher School of Economics in Moscow. Also, I've just returned from the Xi'an Jiaotong Liverpool University in Suzhou near Shanghai, where I was a visiting research scholar for a month. Next month I'll be off to Berlin and Süderberg in Germany, where I will deliver keynote speeches for the Ostfalia Institute for Applied Sciences. And yet, for the longest time, it wasn't like this at all. Quite the opposite, in fact. So let's go back in time a little, 13 years to be precise. The year was 2011, and I just returned to Hong Kong from Singapore, where I'd been interviewed for a futurist position at Nanyang Technological University, which has a world's top 20 ranking, and I quietly wept. You see, I was just one of 2 final candidates for an academic position at that university. It was down to me and the other guy. They chose the other guy. In fact, they didn't even bother to get back to me after the interview. And after my having given a 45-minute presentation there in front of half a dozen senior professors. Now, you might be thinking scornfully, no big deal, you lucky bastard. You got a free trip to Singapore with free accommodation too, to strut around in front of some dried-up professors, and you didn't land the job. Boo-hoo-hoo. Well, yes, but it's all about the context, as Claudine Gay might say. The thing is, this outcome occurred a full 5 long years after I'd graduated from my PhD program, and I was still a mere high school English teacher, because that's what I was doing in Hong Kong, in between heavy bouts of drinking in Lang Kwai Fong, Hong Kong's famous bar area, but I do digress. So it was on that sad Saturday, the head of the department in Singapore finally responded to my email begging for the outcome of my interview, and he dryly informed me that I wasn't good enough. Yet again. A heavy sense of hopelessness and futility fell over me. I faced the prospect of having to sign another 2-year contract as a native English teacher in Hong Kong, including further heavy bouts of drinking in Lang Kwai Fong. Now that was, and still is, a great job by the way, but after 7 years, it was not what I wanted to do any longer. So let me backtrack even further now to provide more context to my despair. Way back in 2002, I'd enrolled in a doctoral program in policy studies at the University of the Sunshine Coast, just north of Brisbane in Australia. Now, USC was a new institution at that time, but didn't have much of a ranking, and still doesn't, to be honest. Nice kangaroos, though. Now, I had a very unusual focus for my intended thesis. Firstly, I wanted to situate it in the discipline of critical future studies, and USC was perfect because the eminent futurist Sohail Inayatullah had agreed to be my supervisor. What's more, my chosen thesis topic was about integrated intelligence, the idea that human consciousness has non-local properties and that this can express itself as a kind of ability to solve problems intuitively. This subject is more than a little esoteric. Indeed, right at the beginning of my enrollment, I was accidentally forwarded an email chain I wasn't supposed to be CC'd in. And one of those emails I read was written by the head of the social sciences faculty, mocking my research focus, and I quote, "What is this integrated intelligence? Is it the hand of God or something?" But to his credit, he let me enroll. So by choosing to research integrated intelligence and frame it within critical future studies, I wasn't exactly entering a known career path. Indeed, some might have said that I was committing career suicide. But at the time, I didn't really care about perceived wisdom nor the call of the market. I was going to follow my passion, God damn it, and embody the philosophy of 19th century American transcendentalist Henry David Thoreau's famous quote, which I had long admired, and which I shall now quote for you. "I have learned this, at least by my experiment, that if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavours to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours." And so it was that I decided to put Thoreau's experiment to the test in my own life, which is what I'd more or less been doing up to that time anyway. But I didn't realize that there is often a price to pay for taking the road less traveled. And that is, you're very likely to end up lost and alone, at least for a time. The question is, do you have the self-belief to endure these limbo periods? Consider that my first key insight in living your bliss. At first, all went smashingly well during my doctoral studies. Mine was a purely theoretical thesis, and although it required great self-discipline, my candidature was mostly a joy. I made rapid progress, so much so that a mere 6 months into my studies, I was paid a virtual visit once again by the head of social sciences. And this time, it was no accident, for I received an email stating that I was progressing way too fast, and I had to slow down. I'd already penned about 100,000 words of mixed quality by that time using integrated inquiry, a process I developed which combined traditional research methods with a deliberate use of integrated intelligence. And no, I did not tell that to the head of social sciences, in case you're wondering. Indeed, I would write about 400,000 words within 2 years, before trimming that back to just over 110,000. And you can learn about integrated inquiry in my book, How to Channel Your Dissertation, if interested. I also published a dozen or so journal papers during this period, and I also presented at my first international conference at Tamkang University in Taiwan. And when I finally submitted my thesis, my 3 examiners all loved it, and there were almost no changes required. The late Princeton academic David Loy was one of those examiners, and his report included the following words. "This doctoral thesis is an exceptional document and has leapt ahead and got to where the discourse will, if we're lucky, arrive in maybe another decade or more. I see this thesis as being the sort of island or rock upon which one can build a very significant career, either as an educator or as a writer, or as both. Again, I must stress I see Marcus T. Anthony as having reached where others will arrive, and most not so well, some years ahead in time. To top all this off, my thesis was accepted for publication by Sense Publishers under the title Integrated Intelligence, and I soon landed my first major book contract for Discover Your Soul template. But alas, upon graduation, my prospects for an academic career quickly dimmed. I had entered the limbo zone. I remember that after about 3 years of repeated rejection from universities, I wrote an online post with the title, "What can you do with a degree in future studies?" It was not so much a hopeful request as a confession of deep despair. I was starting to feel genuinely hopeless and more than a little depressed. A few futurists expressed sympathy in the comments to that post, but realistically, this was a problem I had to solve myself. By the time of my rejection by the Singaporean University in 2011, and with about 5 total years of rejection, I'd hit rock bottom, and it only got worse, I'm afraid to say. Even in 2015, and nearly a full decade after gaining my doctorate, I was still getting reject notices by every university position I applied for, after literally hundreds of job applications. And I didn't just throw out the same cover letters to multiple jobs. I spent a great deal of time on most and carefully crafted them. But I did get some interviews with universities, a total of 16 during that decade, and 16 successive interview failures, despite carefully preparing for each. The situation looked utterly hopeless. But something had changed by 2015, and this is the second of the key insights I want to share in this video, and that is that I had learned to let go, to release the outcomes of my endeavors. Fortunately, my extensive training in mindfulness and personal healing had equipped me to do just that. Yes, I decided that I would just enjoy the ride. So the failed job applications and failed interviews kept right on coming, but they typically affected me only for a short time. Indeed, I literally allowed myself about 5 minutes of self-pity after each rejection and just returned my attention to my creative process and building the life that I wanted to live. For I already knew who I was, and no rejection notice from a university HR department, book publisher, or journal editor could shift that. You can count that as key insight number 3. Believe in yourself no matter what. Yes, listen to the feedback that failure has for you, but learn from it. Don't take it personally. Of course, some rejections were harder to take than others. For example, towards the end of this limbo period, the University of the Sunshine Coast, the very institution that awarded me my doctorate, had 4 positions open for research futurists, and so I threw my hat into the ring. Given that my doctorate was from that same university and centered in future studies, I assumed I'd be a ring-in for an interview, and I didn't even get one. It was exasperating. So by this point, more than 10 years after following my dream and enrolling in my doctoral program to study integrated intelligence in the future, Thoreau's advice to follow your dreams and you will find a success undreamt of in common hours was looking like a sick joke. Now, I do realize my wobbly tale of failure and ultimate fortune is running long on time, and that the story remains incomplete. I still have several important key insights I'd like to share with you, and some more personal stories that I think you'll find either enlightening or deeply disturbing, but I'm going to leave those for the following episode. These anecdotes will reveal how I used and abused my integrated intelligence, how I used failure and defeat to deepen my personal healing, and to learn to believe in myself, and how I was able to spot opportunities ahead of others, and thus advance my own career. After all, a futurist without foresight is about as useful as Donald Trump without a lawyer. All that next week. And I invite you to share your story and your insights in the comments section, because wisdom is most valuable when it's shared. Do feel free to ask questions and I will answer them if possible. Liking this video and subscribing would also help me to keep sharing videos like this one. I'm Marcus T. Anthony. Join me again soon here on the Power and Presence channel.